Friends, the new book of the Torah we commence on this Sabbath, the book of Numbers, fourth book of the 5 books, known as Bamidbar, almost always occurs on the Sabbath before Shavuot, next week's holiday, which marks the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. And this new book begins this way. On the first day of the second month in the second year following the Exodus from the land of Egypt, God spoke to Moses Bamidbar in the wilderness of Sinai, saying, Su'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemishpechotam levet avotam b'mispar shemot, which means take a census of the Israelite community. Unfortunately, this census of our ancestors only included men from each of the Israelite tribes over the age of 20 who were able to bear arms, because the march of our ancestors through the wilderness from Mount Sinai to the Promised Land took them to war, through hostile environments, plagues, illness, natural disasters. In the wilderness, they encountered human danger. So to meet what lies ahead in the wilderness, Bamidbar, Moses and Aaron organize all males over age 20 into military units, other than the Levites, who were assigned special functions. As you might have guessed, there are lots of numbers in the book of Numbers, like on the TV in recent months. You know, that box on the right listing the number of coronavirus cases? I checked just before this service, and as of late this afternoon, there are 1,637,593 coronavirus cases in the United States and 97,293 deaths. The Torah has similar numbers this week, like 603,550 male Israelites, so the census, and 35,400 from the tribe of Benjamin. Why not just round all these numbers off? So many numbers. Because the Torah reminds us, as I'm sure others of you out there also are reminded when you see these numbers, 92,293. The Torah says the numbers matter not because we're counting numbers, but to remember that every person counts. Each and every child of Israel counts, and that each is the leader of the new generation, and more than a number, no matter what a person's age. The first year following liberation from slavery in Egypt, our ancestors began to move in the wilderness, where they would spend the next 38 years continuing their journey and their dialogue with God. And the rabbis remind us that while God could have guided our ancestors along a more direct path to the Promised Land, like Waze or Google Maps, they could have gotten there walking in only 2 years, not 38. The Israelites had to traverse the wilderness, though, to get to the Promised Land. God didn't give them shortcuts. And people erroneously assume that this wilderness that the Israelites went through was barren, like the Sahara Desert. But that's not the case. The Midbar, as in Bamidbar in the wilderness this week, is not a barren place. There is life there. There is hope. There is promise. It's where our ancestors received the Torah, commemorated by next Friday's Shavuot holiday. That time in the wilderness allowed for growth. Not just for our people, it's a wonderful metaphor for all the journeys you and I take through life, including these last 10 weeks plus coping with this extreme and challenging COVID-19 predicament for our congregation, our city, our nation, and world. Has there been fear and job loss in our community? Absolutely. Dislocation and disease? You bet. But just like the wilderness isn't all bad, has there also been reconnection for families and friends on the phone or via Zoom? Has there not also been reflective time to reassess what is essential and what is not in our hectic lives whenever we go back to what the new normal will be? I think so. The wilderness also had it all. Scary nights requiring fire to light the way, which you see in our Danziger Chapel, the symbol of God, giving our people light by night to dispel the darkness. But as the Israeli historian Nachman Ran writes, within the unique and dangerous environment of the wilderness, the Midbar, the Jewish people learned respect for the wonders of nature and the importance of every person to the community. Their desert journey teaches them mutual dependence and loyalty to one another and to the ethical and ritual mitzvahs that are meant to uplift our lives with sacred meaning. Other commentators believe that the experience of our ancestors in the desert, in the wilderness, in the Midbar, toughened them for all the trials they would face in the future. They're forced to endure discomfort, food shortages, invisible enemies seeking to destroy them, unexpected danger. Their hardship strengthened their will to survive and their determination to carry on. I'm talking about our ancestors back in the Torah, but it sounds like recent weeks in the world. Reform rabbinic commentator Harvey Fields notes that this Midbar experience beginning this week with the book of Numbers would later become a model for Jewish behavior during tough times. Our people would look back upon their wanderings across the uncertain, harsh, hostile Sinai desert, and Jews would draw inspiration to persevere in the present no matter what. During these past few months of the pandemic, like our ancestors in the Midbar, we have all had to do a self-inventory, haven't we? We've all had to make adjustments that will hopefully facilitate a bridge to well-being instead of more sadness, loss, or breakdown. A bridge to well-being. In many ways, Manhattan and Memphis, and really every city, looks like a barren desert downtown. The big city's empty. Even as they reopen, they're empty. But in the apartments and homes where you and I have been dwelling and staying, we have found ways like our ancestors did to hope, to reconnect, and to look to the future no matter how long it takes. My dear friends, a few more households of Temple have been directly affected and infected by the coronavirus in recent days. The mild coughs and fever these Temple homes are bearing will pass, and in these cases, they're going to be okay. It is the asymptomatic others in their homes and everyone else they've been around who would unwittingly do potential life-threatening damage were we to fill this chapel tonight with members and guests who don't feel bad, who may even feel all right, but who are shedding a virus which our nation and world is not even close to containing. At Temple Israel, your clergy, your officers, and trustees believe that the synagogue is essential, but that our congregants and guests are not expendable. That is why we suspended in-person worship 10 weeks ago. The issue is not about the right to worship, which, thank God, America affords, freedoms for which hundreds of thousands of American soldiers gave their lives and to whom we pay homage on this Memorial Day weekend. But until it's safe to gather in crowds again, our faith, our synagogue, each Shabbat, is not about rights. Judaism is one big reminder about obligations, our obligations, especially our responsibility to save as many lives as humanly possible. That's what God wants, says Judaism. To be a Jew is to be born for community, and since Judaism is as much about belonging as it is about believing, yes, it is very hard to practice Judaism without being in the physical presence of the thousands of you. However, Judaism is not about rights. It's about our obligation and responsibility to do the right thing, even to be disobedient when human life is compromised, negotiated, or at stake. In closing, as we'll read next Friday morning on Shavuot, Livracha v'lo liklala, for blessing and not for curse, L'chaim v'lo lamavet, for life and not death. That's why we are in this world. That's why we make every Shabbat, even if it's not good, God willing, a peaceful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom.